Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Sutta Uvacha Athate Samparetanam Swanamudakamichatam Datum Sa Krishna Gangayam Puru Pura Krishtaya Yusriya.
Sutta Goswami said, thereafter the Pandavas, desiring to deliver water to the dead relatives who had desired it, went to the Ganges with Draupadi. The ladies walked in front.
Tenini yodakam sarve velapya cha prashnam puna apluta haripadabja rajaputa sarijale.
Having lamented over them and sufficiently offered Ganges water, they bathed in the Ganges, whose water is sanctified due to being mixed with the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord.
Santavayama samunibhi. Tatra sinam kuru patim dhritarashtra sahanujam gandharim putra shokartam partham krishnam cha madhava.
There sat the king of the Kurus, Maharaja Yudhishthira, along with his younger brothers and Dhritarashtra, Gandhari, Kunti, and Draupadi, all overwhelmed with grief. Lord Krishna was also there.
Santavayama samunibhi hata bandhun suchapirtan bhuteshu kalasya gatim darshayanna pratikriyam.
Citing the stringent laws of the Almighty and their reactions upon living beings, Lord Sri Krishna and the Munis began to pacify those who were shocked and affected.
Sadhayitva jata shatru swam rajam kiti veritam gatayitva satoragya kacha sparshakshitayusha.
The clever Duryodhana and his party cunningly usurped the kingdom of Yudhishthira, who had no enemy. By the grace of the Lord, the recovery was executed, and the unscrupulous kings who joined with Duryodhana were killed by him. Others also died. Their duration of life having decreased for their rough handling of the hair of Queen Draupadi.
Yajayitva shvamedhaistam tribhiruttamakalpake tatyasha pavanam dikshu shatamanyorevatanot.
Lord Sri Krishna caused 3 well-performed Svadharma yajnas, horse sacrifices, to be conducted by Maharaj Yudhishthira, and thus caused his virtuous fame to be glorified in all directions, like that of Indra, who had performed 100 such sacrifices.
Amantya panduputramscha shainayodhava samyuta dvaipayanadivir pujite pratipujita.
Lord Sri Krishna then prepared for his departure. He invited the sons of Pandu, after having been worshipped by the Brahmanas, headed by Srila Vyasadeva. The Lord also reciprocated greetings.
Gantum krita matir brahman dvarakam rathamastita upalebe bidhavantim uttaram bhaya vivalam.
As soon as he seated himself on the chariot to start for Dwaraka, he saw Uttara hurrying toward him in fear.
Uttara uvacha pahi pahi mahayogin deva deva jagatpate nanyam tvada bhayam pashe yatra mrityu parasparam.
Uttara said, O Lord of Lords, Lord of the universe, you are the greatest of mystics. Please protect me, for there is no one else who can save me from the clutches of death in this world of duality.
Abhidravati mamisha sharastapta yaso vibhu kamam dahatu mam natha mame garbho nipatyatam.
O my Lord, you are all-powerful. A fiery iron arrow is coming towards me fast. My Lord, let it burn me personally, if you so desire. But please do not let it burn and abort my embryo. Please do me this favor, my Lord.
Sutta uvacha upadharya vachastasya bhagavan bhaktavatsala apandavam idam kartum dronirashtam adbhudyata.
Sutta Goswami said, having patiently heard her words, Lord Sri Krishna, who is always very affectionate to his devotees, could at once understand that Asvathama, the son of Dronacharya, had thrown the Brahmastra to finish the last life in the Pandava family.
Tarhevata muni shrestha Pandava panchasayakan Atmano bhimukhan deeptan Alakshastran yupadadu.
O foremost among the great thinkers, Munis, Sonaka, seeing the glaring Brahmastra proceeding towards them, the Pandavas took up their 5 respective weapons.
Vyasanam vikshatatesham ananya vishayatmanam sudarshanena svastrena swanam raksham vyadad vibhu.
The Almighty Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, having observed that a great danger was befalling his unalloyed devotees, who were fully surrounded souls, at once took up his Sudarshana disc to protect them.
Antastha sarvabhutanam atma yogeshvaro hari swamaya vrinod garbham vairatyah kurutantave.
The Lord of Supreme Mysticism, Sri Krishna, resides within everyone's heart as the Paramatma. As such, just to protect the progeny of the Kuru dynasty, he covered the embryo of Uttara by his personal energy.
Yadyapyastram brahmashira tvamogam cha pratikriyam Vaishnavam teja sadhya samasham yad briguvaha.
O Shaunaka, although the supreme Brahmastra weapon released by Asvathama was irresistible and without check or counteraction, it was neutralized and foiled when confronted by the strength of Vishnu, Lord Krishna.
Mamam sthayet tadashtaryam sarvasharyamaye jute ya idam mayaya devya srajatyavati hantyaja.
O Brahmanas, do not think this to be especially wonderful in the activities of the mysterious and infallible personality of Godhead. By his own transcendental energy, he maintains and annihilates all material things, although he himself is unborn.
Brahma tejo vinirmukte atmajay saha krishnaya prayana bhimukham krishnam idam mahaparthasiti.
Thus said from the radiation of Brahmastra, Kunti, the chaste devotee of the Lord, and her 5 sons, and Draupadi, addressed Lord Krishna as he started for home.
Kunti uvacha namasye purusham tvadyam ishwaram prakrite param alaksham sarvabhutanam Antarbahiravastitam.
Srimati Kunti said, O Krishna, I offer my obeisances unto you, because you are because you are the original personality and are unaffected by the qualities of the material world. You are existing both within and without everything, yet you are invisible to all. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, you're on mute at the moment.
Hare Krishna. I firstly just wanted to thank the children for the wonderful recital.
Thank you.
Yes, it was just so purifying and so transcendental. So thank you so much. When the children are reciting, you can feel the purity of their force. So wonderful. Thank you. So my name is Nandrani, and Nandrani Devi Dasi, and my role today is to go through the verse 13. So let me start by just going through the translation again. So the translation is: the Almighty Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, having observed that a great danger was befalling his unalloyed devotees, who are fully surrendered souls, at once the Lord takes up his Sudarshan disc to protect them. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Brahmastra, the supreme weapon released by Ashvatthama, was something similar to a nuclear weapon, but with more radiation and heat. This Brahmastra is the product of a more subtle science, being the product of a finer sound, a mantra recorded in the Vedas. Another advantage of this weapon is that it's not blind like a nuclear weapon, because it can be directed only to the target and nothing else. Ashvatthama released the weapon just to finish all the male members of the Pandu family. Therefore, in one sense, it was more dangerous than the atomic bombs, because it could penetrate even the most protected place and would never miss the target. Knowing all this, Lord Shri Krishna at once took up his personal weapon to protect his devotees. He did not know anyone, his devotees who did not know anyone other than Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has clearly promised his devotees are never vanquished, and he behaves according to the quality or the degree of the devotional service rendered by the devotees. Here, the word Ananya Vishwayatmanam is significant. The Pandavas were 100% dependent on the protection of the Lord, although they were all great warriors themselves. But the Lord neglects even the greatest of warriors and also vanquishes them in no time. When the Lord saw that there was no time for the Pandavas to counteract the Brahmastra of Ashvatthama, He took up his weapon, even at the risk of breaking his own vow. Although the Battle of Kurukshetra was almost finished, still, according to his vow, he should not have taken up his own weapon. But the emergency was more important than the vow. He's better known as Bhakta Vatsalya, or the lover of his devotees, and thus he preferred to continue his Bhakta Vatsalya than to be a worldly moralist who never breaks his solemn vow. Magyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakara Chakshurunnitamena Tasmai Shri Guru Namo Vishnupaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prashananda Nivishishya Sunyavadi Pashtati Sthana Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Shri Gadadhar Srivas Guru Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. So just taking permission and blessings from all the devotees present, that I may serve the Lord and the Parampara and yourselves by sharing something that is relevant and enlivening, and ultimately it's for my betterment more than anything else. So, dear devotees, in chapter 7, it ends with the sons of Pandu and Draupadi. They're overwhelmed with grief, and they perform the proper rituals for the dead bodies of their relatives. And we begin with the first part of chapter 8, with the understanding that the duration of the life for Duryodhana and the others who were so unscrupulous, the unscrupulous kings, the duration of their life was reduced or decreased because of their rough handling of the hair of Queen Draupadi. And that is because, the Lord really, accelerated and wanted Arjuna to fight, because the Lord never tolerates offenses to his devotees, and particularly in this situation, a woman and a queen, and she was chased, she was mishandled and mistreated. So the Lord never forgives that. Now we can say sometimes the Lord is impartial and he sits back and it's our karma, but when it's different, because when a devotee of the Lord is hurt, then the Lord takes it very personal. And the key things for us to note is that women, if we want to be successful in our lives, then, and we don't want to decrease the duration of our life, then we must protect brahmanas, women, because it maintains society, chastity, cows, for all the reasons that we know, economically, environmentally, but also the milk, because it's a food that also develops the fine brain tissue. Protection of children, because good progeny brings about peace and tranquility and a productive life, and the protection of old men, that we can support elderly men. It's not just women, but it's also elderly men, because women fall into all the categories, women and children. But when it comes, this is something that we must all note, that old men, to support them for the betterment of their life. So we've also covered that Uttara pleads to Lord Krishna because again she's his devotee, and she runs to him and she asks him, please my lord, this weapon is being fired at me, and as Srila Prabhupada said, it's even more lethal than a nuclear weapon, and so when it's directed, it never misses the hit. And she knew that she was in danger, but as a queen also, she was also very aware that it wasn't just the implication of her child, but the future of the dynasty. And so she of course prays to the Lord and asks the Lord, would you please protect it if you wish and you desire. So that's something we can learn, that, and coming on to Queen Kunti's prayers in a moment, that ultimately the Lord, he gives us raksha, and if we're to die, then he also is the permitter and sanctioner, as the super soul within the heart. And so it comes to today's verse, where the Lord is taking up his Sudarshan chakra, and he's breaking his vow, because the Lord had promised that he would not take part on either side of the war. So here, one may question the Lord and say, well, you broke your promise. You said you wouldn't fight, but then here you go, you pick up your Sudarshan chakra and, you fire it. And as Srila Prabhupada tells us that this was an exception because of his surrendered devotee. And he wanted us to note in the purport the word Ananya Vishatmanam, that this was an emergency. And because the Lord takes up his role as Bhakta Vatsalya, that despite his promise that he wouldn't fight, the Lord is even willing to break his vow for his devotee. And, Srila Prabhupada says that we can understand this because in this situation, the emergency took more priority than the vow. And sometimes, it's very, unless you get into the bhav of Lord Krishna and the gopis, it's at a very, very high level, that sometimes we begin to understand that why is the Lord the one who, he's mischievous. Lord Ram is just very forthright, and he, it's dharma and duty. But why is Lord Krishna so supreme? Because he is willing to break his vow even for his devotees, because in that situation, breaking of the vow is not as important as protecting Uttara. So it's interesting, Srila Prabhupada says that, that Srila Prabhupada says that Lord Krishna is Bhakta Vatsalya, the lover of his devotee. And he's more than a moralist who never breaks his vow. Now, this is because the Lord can never tolerate to see his devotees in danger. So there's a story, dear devotees, ladies and gentlemen, about a moralist, a person who was very forthright, very diligent about life. Everything had to be black and white, and we can get very at an egotistical level, we can actually get very prideful and I know better and I know everything. But the problem with that is that it can lead to high degrees of cruelty to others. And there's an example of this, and this example is that there were soldiers running after some person, and they were running after them to kill them. Now the moralist, the person who's made a vow of always speaking the truth, was approached by these soldiers, and they said, you know, where did this person run? And because he valued his vow so much, he said the truth and said, right, well, they went this way, and the soldiers went after this person and killed them. The lesson to learn is that sometimes being very forthright, you know, there's that lack of compassion and consideration that in this situation, perhaps a white lie would have been a greater truth because it would have saved that person or that devotee. So then, of course, the moralist becomes implicated in the violence. And here, Lord Krishna tells us, because he's the, you know, he demonstrates to us, because he's the ultimate permitter and sanctioner, and he's the Chaitra Guru, and he's the super soul, the Paramatma within the heart. The Lord chooses that he rides against his vow, he bypasses his vow, so that he can protect his devotee. Now, let's see what else Srila Prabhupada wants us to know. Right, so the other thing Srila Prabhupada wants us to know is that the Lord protects us in proportion to our surrender. So here, Srila Prabhupada uses the word %, that the Pandavas were completely and utterly dependent on the Lord for protection. And this is now very soon where Queen Kunti begins her prayers, starting with what the children finished at the end, that she prays that, you know, you're the Supreme Lord, the cause of all causes, you know, you are the source of everything. So there's, what is it about the devotee who is 100% dependent on the Lord for protection? And Prabhupada says that the Pandavas, even though they were really great warriors themselves, they were completely dependent on the protection of the Lord. So one can say that, what is the difference between someone who's so powerful outwardly and then a devotee of the Lord who's very powerful? One thinks that they take credit for their own power or strength or fame or fortune or intelligence. But someone who is a devotee completely surrenders to Krishna, knowing that he is the source of all sources. Everything emanates from him. And so the wise who know this surrender to the Lord. Again, you know, the Bhagavad Gita verse, that there is something about devotees. What is it about devotees? Even though they may have all opulence, fame, strength, intelligence, beauty, that they completely depend on the Lord for protection. Now, some people may argue and say, well, if you're a pure devotee of the Lord, you don't ask the Lord for anything. But we can see that here with the Pandavas, we can see that with Queen Kunti, we can see that with even Gajendra, that these are wonderful devotees who understand, and Srila Prabhupada said the difference between the Westerners and you know, other devotees was that the Western devotees weren't as scared of Maya. And so this is one thing that we have to understand, that what differentiates pure devotee from someone who's trying to be a devotee, again, the proportion of surrender, is that the pure devotee of the Lord understands that they are in the material world completely helpless. and that the power, the strength comes from understanding that without the Lord, everything is illusion. So the illusion of me, the great I, I've got strength, I've got kingdom, I've got money, I've got position. And of course, with Queen Kunti, what's so significant about her is, that I suppose as a child, I didn't really understand how profound Queen Kunti's prayers were. But my mother always said, you must always meditate on Queen Kunti's prayers. And the distinction is that when we are completely exhausted by the illusion that the material world is going to make us happy, that is when we become ready to surrender to the Lord. So in this purport, Srila Prabhupada also says that the Pandavas were 100% dependent on the protection of the Lord, although they were great warriors themselves, but the Lord neglects even the greatest of warriors and also vanquishes them in no time. So who are some of the greatest warriors? Jarasandh, we know, Hiranyakashipu, Hiranyaksha, Kamsa, but in a flick of a moment, all the demons that came to Vrindavan, the Lord demonstrated his supremacy even as a baby by annihilating all these demons, these warriors. And we also understand that even with Arjuna, when the Lord asks him to go to Dwarka and protect the queens, and at some point Arjuna doesn't even feel like he can even protect the queens, because why? The Lord is bewildering. We don't always understand, but one thing a devotee always understands is, even if we're guided by the Lord, whatever that it is that he guides us within the super soul, within the Paramatma, within our heart, the outcome is not ours, good or bad. It's never ours. So I think that's one thing to really bear in mind, that all strength comes from the Lord, and we can see this certainly in Uttara's situation. And also Srila Prabhupada says there wasn't enough time for the Pandavas to actually counteract the Brahmastra weapon. And so whatever is lacking within us, when you're a pure devotee of the Lord and completely surrendered, the Lord takes over and protects his devotees. So let me just sum up really the first part of chapter 8, just to sort of round it all up, and then we'll open up for some questions. So the Pandavas and Lord Krishna, they deliver Ganga water to all the relatives that were slain in the battle of Kurukshetra. And Lord Krishna, he directs the Pandavas to undertake 3 Ashwamedha Yajnas performed by King Yudhishthira. And then the Lord prepares to depart for Dwarka, where Uttara then hurries towards him and pleads to the Lord, asking him, telling him that Ashwatthama is hurling this Brahmastra weapon. He's about to kill the unborn child within her womb, who is the last surviving member of the Pandavas, certainly male member. So the whole kingdom will be annihilated, and Lord Krishna protects her with his Sudarshan disc, and again being the super soul, so he protects her by averting the Brahmastra weapon, and of course it's like Srila Prabhupada said, it was almost coming to her, but because the Lord is the super soul within the heart, the Lord expanded within her womb and covered her embryo through his personal energy, and saves the baby. So then the children read to the last verse that, Kunti Devi now is approaching Lord Krishna with her sons, and she's offering prayers. Again, asking for protection. So I think I'll stop there, because I'm not going to go too much into her prayers. But the bottom line is that the surrendered devotee understands that in this material world, we're actually very weak and very vulnerable. Like my mother always used to say, it's walking on a knife's edge, this material world. And the illusion is that we think it's real. And later on in verse 25, Srila Prabhupada gives an analogy where, a man sees a tiger swallowing him in the dream, and he may cry because of this calamity, but actually there's no tiger and there's no suffering. It's simply a case of dreams. And in the same way, all calamities of life is said to be like dreams. Again, when it's without the presence of the Lord, everything is illusion. So thank you so much for listening. And I would really welcome all of you to make a comment, share your realizations, and if you have questions, then please do ask them.
Hare Krishna, Nandrani.
Hare Krishna, Balika Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your wonderful class. It's really nice.
Thank you.
My understanding of this whole, Uttara surrendering to Krishna.
Yeah.
It's just the way everything is set up in the Bhagavatam is for us to learn, to get the connection from Krishna.
Yeah.
And that's the purpose of the whole Bhagavatam. And then Uttara really displayed that she's completely surrendered, and she has so much faith that though it says that Krishna is Bhakta Vatsala, so he for him the rules and regulation doesn't apply. Like when Arjuna was in the battlefield and Krishna said, "I will not touch," but Bhishmadev, when he was really going to kill Arjuna, and Krishna just broke the rule, and he picked up the wheel and he was going to throw to Bhishmadev. And because also Krishna is just not Arjuna is the only devotee, Bhishmadev also devotee, so he had his special relationship. So that's why he kind of, to please him, also he did that. So here also, in a way, here though he is not going to pick up any weapon, but again, for devotee, for God, there is no rules and regulation. That's what my understanding. That's why more we can surrender ourselves to Krishna, and our life is going to be easier. And this is the whole Bhagavatam is teaching us this knowledge. So we need to chant, the way we need to, Srila Prabhupada has taught us. So that way we can help ourselves to progress in our spiritual life. Thank you, Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mother, for those realizations. And coming back to the point that the Lord is beyond all morality, is that in the material world, the morality is bound by the modes of material nature. And so when the English saying says that the road to hell is paved with good intentions, there will always be some irregularity, even within morality in the material world, unless Krishna is at the center of it.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Very nice class. Nicely explained. Srila Prabhupada, when he was going through hardship, when he was sick in America, he would always tell his devotees to recite the prayers of Queen Kunti. So when they asked him, and he would say, what is my problem? What is my suffering is nothing comparing to Queen Kunti. That's why, as your mother always told you, and the Queen Kunti's prayer is very, very beautiful, very beautiful. Also, when Uttara ran toward Lord Krishna, there was all his fathers-in-law there, 5 of them, great Pandavas. So she ran straight to Lord Krishna, because when Queen Kunti once told Draupadi, you know, whenever you have any problem, just think about Krishna, no one else. So she passed it down to her daughter-in-law. So because they say Krishna, the Pandavas, they can kill, they're great warriors, but they cannot revive a dead soul. So that's why Uttara went directly to Krishna. That's showing us that we should not go to anybody else, directly to Krishna whenever we are in any kind of problems.
Yeah.
And another thing is where Krishna, he broke his own vow. He's on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He wanted to have this Virya Ras, you know, when the chivalry fighting with Bhishma, because there was nobody else with whom he can satisfy this rasa. So that's why he fought with Bhishmadev. Actually, Bhishmadev threw arrows at him, but he did not do that. He accepted it as garlands of flowers on him, and he relishes whenever Bhishmadev was shooting him. Hare Krishna. That's my realization for today. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for that contribution, Mother. And, you know, when you said, like, my mother instructed me to read the prayers of Queen Kunti, well, I didn't really understand at that time how profound they were. And later on in this chapter, there's an analogy in verse 29. And I want to just reinforce what you were saying, that the Lord is never partial. And it describes the Lord like the sun. Like the sun is never partial to anyone. The sun's rays always shine on everything and everyone, no matter what. It doesn't differentiate. And then if we're able to utilize those sun's rays, then even stones become valuable. Right now we're in winter, if we utilize that part, a small part of the morning sun, you know, we get a bit of vitamin D. But if we don't, then our bones become weak. And, you know, having just seen an osteopath yesterday, but when we're blind, we can't see the sun rays, you know, even though the sun rays are before you. Like my mother used to say, just, you know, surrender to the prayers of Queen Kunti. Her instructions were very clear, Bhagavad Gita and Queen Kunti. But the irony is sometimes things will just face us, you know, like the Bhagavatam, like Queen Kunti's prayers, like other prayers, like you mentioned, Bhishma's teachings, things that Mother Balika mentioned. And I think it's only when you sometimes get into the autumn of your life where you've had so many challenges that you never ever comprehended would happen, then you realize actually what Queen Kunti was saying and how Srila Prabhupada helps us to appreciate, put our troubles in context when we think about what Queen Kunti had to go through, you know, marrying and then husband dying, having to be a widow, taking care of her children, all the issues that went on in the royal courts, all the skullduggery and the politics, and, you know, having to be ostracized, seeing difficulties for her son, seeing her grandchildren being murdered, seeing the kingdom being taken away. You know, Kunti experienced so much so much difficulty, and here she was a royal queen. So it's right what Indulekha Mataji said, that when we compare our challenges to what Queen Kunti went through, we get a sort of an appreciation of how maybe we're so protected by Krishna that, you know, the devotee's attitude is always that, Krishna, I know I probably deserve more, but because somehow you're in my life, you're protecting me. So that's what we can really appreciate also from Indulekha Mataji's comment.
Also, Mataji, we may try to just read it, we may try to learn it, but until we understand the prayers, a long time I wanted to learn this prayer, but I could not. Once I heard one devotee, he was in our Sampradaya, right? He was narrating this Katha, and what he said, and at that time I believed him. He said that when he said, Maya Javanika Channam, right? This Kunti Maharani saying in her prayer. So the second verse. And he read Maya Chavanika Janam. That means what he explained was that everybody is running after Maya, and Chavani, he means money. So, and then I took it like that. But now when I'm reading this, I'm trying to understand it. And I say, he was wrong. And now it's coming. I think when we really put our heart to it, then we understand the real meaning. Now I understand that this Maya Javanika is just a curtain in front of Lord Krishna, so that we cannot see him directly, and devotees only can understand a little bit about Lord Krishna. Otherwise, if we don't have this kind of heart, we will never understand. Now when I'm learning this again, I can find the difference. So we should be careful when we listen also.
Yes, absolutely. And this is why Srila Prabhupada is always saying, and he's warning us, you know, who we hear from, because, you know, it's that small change, isn't it? You know, you take a wrong turning, you know, when you're on a long journey, and it just takes you off course completely. But, you know, some people will say, you know, why does Queen Kunti say, you know, I welcome all these challenges? Certainly with Uttara, whatever challenge she had, you could see the greatness of her devotion and her surrender, that sometimes the Lord gives calamities to his devotees, just so that they can be glorified in terms of their surrender, and that we can learn from them. And many people will say, no, I don't want problems, I don't want difficulties. But here Queen Kunti is saying, you know, in every moment when I'm happy, I'm distracted, I forget you, Krishna. So let these challenges come, because she understands, like the tiger. You see the tiger in the dream, and we think, oh, it's really all happening to me. But that's the illusion, isn't it? Because without Krishna, we're all just having a bad dream. Unless Krishna's right in the center of it, you know, we wake up to the reality that we're not designed to be here. And therefore, take very quickly, if we can, take example of these wonderful devotees like Uttara and Queen Kunti, and the Pandavas, and surrender.
So actually, Queen Kunti, she does not really ask for all these problems. What she tells Krishna is, Krishna, if I have to go through all these problems again, I will accept the challenges just because you will be there with me. It's not like, give me more problems. It's like,
no, nobody, I think nobody in their same mind would say, give me problems, but she's saying they're welcome. Now,
yes, they're welcome. Yes, the difference, And
the difference, the difference is that when difficult things happen to us, we think, oh, how could it happen to us? And then we start becoming defensive to it, and we want to deny it, and we start suffering because we're attached to a different outcome, to the outcome that really happens. So yes, you're right. We welcome the calamities as an opportunity for us to become closer to Krishna. So I'm going to stop there now. Unless if there is somebody else who would like to contribute. Thank you, Nilika Mataji and Parika Mataji for your contributions. Is there anybody else before I close?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Sailesh Bhai.
How are you?
Very
Just
good,
a
thank you.
very quick one. I know you want to wrap up. Just wanted to make a contribution towards the point about truthfulness, etc. Krishna gives us very clear instructions in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 17, verse 15.
Yeah.
Austerity of speech consists of speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and not agitating to others, and are also in regular reciting Vedic literature. So there is a priority there. It is not just truthfulness, but it's also has to be pleasing and beneficial and not agitating to others. So there is a combination, and there is and I can't remember, I think I've heard in one of Prabhupada's lectures that there is a priority pecking order to that.
Yeah.
And beneficial to the others, beneficial to somebody, being truthful, being non-agitating. There is a pecking order to those. So it's, as you rightly say, just speaking a white line isn't necessarily an excuse, but the greater priority is that it should be beneficial to somebody. If it's not going to be beneficial, there's no point saying it. So I'd like that. There is a very clear guideline on how we should be abiding by what is called austerity of speech. So yeah, it's just a point to expand on your morality point that you were making.
Yeah. And thank you for that, Sailesh Bhai, because often, I know certainly in my case, when I think I'm speaking the truth, I can become quite emotional, and sometimes it can even come across rude because you value the higher truth. But here it's absolutely, as you quite rightly said, very, very clear. It should be beneficial and also pleasing. And this is why when Vidura returns back, there are things that he knows will happen, but he chooses not to say anything because it's not beneficial and it's not pleasing. And that was the austerity of his speech, to remain quiet. So yes, thank you so much for that. And on that note, I should remain quiet. And if there isn't anything else, let's close this evening, taking the dust of your lotus feet and praying for your blessings. Thank you for tolerating me. Forgive me for any offenses or anything that wasn't appropriate today. Thank you so Sailesh.
Thank you. Very nice class. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Nandrani, for very nice.
Mataji.
Thank you. Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Mataji. Very nice class. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Mataji.
Thank you.